What the hell is this, Cole? You think you're reporting for the Salvation Army? Sergeant Miller's voice cracked across the barracks like a rifle shot. Every pair of eyes snapped toward me, and I felt my stomach twist. My boots weren't shining. They were dull and scuffed, no matter how hard I had scrubbed. My fatigues were wrinkled, still damp from being hung up overnight, and I knew right then I was the target. A ripple of laughter rolled through the platoon. Looks like Private Farm Boy brought his work clothes instead of his uniform, someone sneered. I kept my chin tucked, praying the moment would pass. But Miller wasn't done. He circled me like a shark smelling blood. You disrespect this uniform again, Cole. I'll have you scrubbing latrines until your grandchildren enlist. You understand me? I locked my eyes forward, my throat tight. Yes, Sergeant. The words came out steady, but inside I was burning. Not with anger, with shame. The humiliation didn't end with formation. At chow, I carried my tray past a table of recruits, and their whispers weren't whispers at all. Look at him. Doesn't belong here. Bet he folds before the month's out. Another one chuckled. His old man probably signed the papers for him. No way this kid volunteered. I sat down alone in the far corner, the clatter of trays and the roar of conversation surrounding me like a wall. That's when I noticed Corporal Ramirez, leaning against the wall near the exit. His eyes flicked toward me for half a second. He didn't say a word, but he didn't laugh either. In a place where silence usually meant indifference, that silence felt different. Like maybe, just maybe, someone saw the storm I was trying to hold back. Later that night, lights out, I lay on my bunk staring at the ceiling. The barracks were filled with the snores and coughs of exhausted recruits. My chest still ached from push-ups, my legs burned from sprints, and my pride was in pieces. I reached under my pillow and pulled out a small notebook, my only real possession from home. On the first page, in shaky handwriting, was something my father once told me before his final deployment. A soldier doesn't prove himself when he's strong, he proves himself when the world calls him weak. Dad never made it back from that deployment, and here I was, trying to carry his name in a place that already decided I wasn't worth carrying at all. My hands trembled as I wrote, Day 7, humiliated in front of everyone. But I'll finish what you started, Dad. I swear I will. The next morning, we lined up for PT. The cold air slapped us awake, and the drill sergeants barked cadence as we ran. My lungs burned by the second mile. By the third, I was fighting to stay upright. When I stumbled, gasps and snickers spread down the line. Told you he couldn't hack it, someone shouted. My legs screamed for me to stop, but I forced them to keep moving. I hit the ground on push-ups until sweat stung my eyes and mud caked my palms. Miller's shadow loomed over me. Pathetic, he spat. If you're looking for sympathy, Cole, you won't find it here. He walked off, and I pressed my face into the dirt, trying to hide the shame clawing its way up my chest. Behind me, I thought I heard Ramirez's boots pause just for a moment. Then they moved on, still silent. But that pause, that hesitation, was enough to remind me I wasn't completely invisible. Every hour of that day felt like a test I wasn't meant to pass. At weapons cleaning, my hands shook, and my rifle jammed during inspection. Miller smirked, shaking his head like I was a waste of oxygen. During drill, I called cadence too softly, and the squad groaned in frustration. By evening, I was the platoon joke. But I kept telling myself, one more hour, one more day. If I could just survive the humiliation, maybe there'd be a chance to show what I carried inside. Not strength, not skill, just stubbornness, the kind my father called resilience. That night, as the barracks quieted again, I caught sight of Ramirez leaning on his bunk, polishing his boots. He glanced my way, then back at his work, silent as ever. But for a split second, I thought I saw it. Respect, or maybe pity. Hard to tell. Either way, it was more than I'd gotten from anyone else. I held on to that small flicker like it was a lifeline. Because deep down, I knew the real test hadn't even started yet. The humiliation was just the beginning. Something was coming, something that would either break me for good or give me the one shot to prove them all wrong. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The rain had been falling since before dawn, thick sheets pounding the asphalt as if the sky itself wanted us broken. We stood in formation, water dripping from our helmets, boots sinking into the mud. Sergeant Miller's voice cut through the storm like a whip. Push-ups. Until you puke. Let's see who's soldier enough to survive a drizzle. Some of the guys laughed, gritting their teeth as if pain was a joke. Me? I felt the mud sucking me down with every rep. My arms shook, my chest pressed into the cold ground, and water filled my nose. Cole, Miller roared. You're slower than molasses. What's wrong, farm boy? You afraid of a little rain? His laughter set the others off, chuckles echoing in the downpour. I clenched my jaw, swallowed the taste of blood, and kept pushing. 1, 2, 10, 20. My body screamed, but I refused to stop. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. By the time Miller called halt, my arms were jelly. We were soaked, steaming like cattle driven too hard. Back in the barracks, my uniform clung to me like a second skin, stiff and wet. The guys stripped off boots, tossing them against the wall with easy banter. I tried to wring the water from mine, and that's when Kendall, the squad's golden boy, walked past. His boots gleamed even in the gloom, polished so well you could see your face in them. He smirked at me. Hey, Cole, you ever heard of shoe polish? Or did you think dirt was a new fashion? Laughter spread again, easy and cruel. I forced myself not to answer. Silence was my shield. Still, every word lodged in my chest like shrapnel. I told myself I'd take it. I'd survive it. At Chow, it was no better. I stood at the end of the line, stomach rumbling, rain dripping from my hair. The smell of powdered eggs and burnt bacon made my hunger unbearable. Kendall and his buddies sat at the first table, already loud. Save a seat for Cole, one of them called out mockingly. He needs a high chair. The table erupted. My face flushed hot. I took my tray to the far corner, head down. The noise of their laughter filled the hall, louder than the clatter of utensils. That's when I saw Ramirez again. He slid past me without a word. But a second later, a fresh roll appeared on my tray. I looked up, but he'd already sat down across the room. He never even glanced back. But that roll, it was more than food. It was the first act of quiet defiance against the tide of ridicule. That night when lights went out, I didn't sleep. My body hurt too much. I slipped out quietly, boots laced, and headed to the obstacle course. The moon hung heavy, the rain finally gone, leaving puddles that mirrored the floodlights. Alone, I faced the wall that had defeated me earlier in the day. During drills, I'd slipped halfway. Up, my fingers too weak, and Miller had barked, "Pathetic! Even my grandmother could climb faster." The guys never let me forget it. Now it was just me, the wall, and the silence. My palms burned, my muscles quivered, but I clawed my way up, breath ragged. I slipped once, fell into the mud, knocked the wind out of me. I cursed, rolled onto my knees, and went again. And again. Until finally, near dawn, I pulled myself over the top and landed hard on the other side. No cheers, no applause, just me, standing in the dark, covered in mud but undefeated. For the first time, I let myself believe I might belong. But the next day was another battlefield of humiliation. During weapons maintenance, my hands were trembling so bad I fumbled the bolt. The rifle clattered to the floor. Gasps filled the room. Miller's voice thundered, "Cole, that's not just a weapon you dropped. That's your life. Drop it in combat and you're already a dead man." The shame burned hotter than the sweat rolling down my spine. Kendall leaned close as we marched out. "Better pray we never see combat, farm boy. You'll get us all killed." His words cut deep, not because I believed them, but because some of the others did. I saw it in their eyes. Later, a letter arrived from home. My sister's handwriting was shaky but determined. "Danny, you don't have to be the best. Just don't quit. Every step you take, Dad's with you. Make us proud." I read it 3 times, each word like a hand on my back, pushing me forward. I folded it carefully, tucked it in my breast pocket, and whispered, "I won't quit. Not for him. Not for you." Days blurred into weeks, and I lived in that cycle. Humiliation, endurance, tiny victories no one saw. Until one evening during drill, it all came to a head. We were ordered to march in formation, rifles shouldered, cadence sharp. I was tired, legs heavy, but I fought to stay in step. Then it happened. My boots slipped on the wet asphalt and I stumbled into Kendall. He shoved me back hard. "Watch it, idiot," he snapped, loud enough for everyone to hear. The formation rippled, men snickering. Miller stormed over, face red. "What the hell's going on?" Kendall didn't miss a beat. "Cole can't stay on his feet, Sergeant. He's a hazard." For a second, I thought Miller would tear into me. His eyes burned holes through me. But then, something unexpected. Ramirez stepped forward, voice calm but firm. "Permission to speak, Sergeant." Miller scowled. "Say it." Ramirez locked, eyes with him. "Cole's been putting in extra hours on the course. Saw him last night. Alone. Climbed that wall until he made it over. Doesn't sound like a hazard to me." Silence hit the platoon like a grenade. Kendall's smirk faded. Miller's jaw tightened. He didn't praise me. He never would. But he didn't rip me apart either. He just growled, "Get back in formation." And for the first time, I felt something shift. Not victory. Not yet. But the balance was changing. That night, lying in my bunk, I replayed Ramirez's words. He hadn't done much. Just told the truth. But in this place, where silence was the law, even that small act was explosive. For the first time since I'd arrived, I didn't feel completely alone. And deep down, I knew the storm wasn't over. The real test was still coming. But when it did, I'd be ready. Because sometimes survival isn't about winning the fight in front of everyone. Sometimes it's about fighting alone in the dark until the day comes when nobody can ignore you anymore. The night exercise was supposed to be routine. Just another simulated mission out in the woods. Another long march under the stars with blanks in our rifles and sweat running down our backs. But everyone knew this one was different. It was the final test before graduation. Fail here, and months of pain and humiliation meant nothing. The platoon was nervous, restless. Even Kendall, who strutted through every drill like he owned the place, couldn't hide the tightness in his jaw. I could feel his eyes on me before we even left the assembly area, that same sneer curling on his face. "Better keep up this time, farm boy. Don't trip over your own boots." Laughter rippled through the squad. I stayed silent. Words were cheap. Only actions mattered tonight. We moved out at 2100 sharp, packs heavy on our shoulders, boots crunching through wet leaves. The forest was alive with the hum of insects, the occasional crack of a branch. The darkness pressed in on us, and even the bravest kept glancing over their shoulders. We were divided into fire teams, each with specific roles. Kendall, of course, was given point. He thrived on the spotlight. I was shoved to the rear, the place for stragglers. Miller's voice echoed from earlier that day. "Cole, if you get lost, don't bother coming back." His words rang in my ears with every step. The mission was clear. Navigate across the woods, cross a river with all gear intact, and secure a designated hilltop under simulated enemy fire. On paper, it was simple, but everyone knew things never went by the book. Halfway through, under the pale glow of the moon, we hit the river. The current was stronger than it looked. We lashed our rifles to ponchos, made makeshift rafts, and one by one started across. Kendall was halfway through when it happened. He slipped. 1 second he was steady, the next he was under. The current dragged him, his pack weighing him down. Shouts filled the air. "Kendall, grab the rope!" Panic spread through the squad, everyone frozen for just a moment too long. Without thinking, I dropped my gear and dove in. The water was ice, stabbing every nerve. I kicked hard, eyes burning, hands reaching through the current. Kendall's head surfaced once, twice, then vanished. My chest ached as I fought to dive. I caught his harness with my fingertips, yanked upward, lungs screaming. His eyes were wild, terror replacing arrogance. "Don't let go!" he gasped, choking on water. I locked my arm around his chest and kicked with everything I had. The current tried to rip us apart, but inch by inch, I dragged him toward the far bank. By the time we rolled onto the mud, both of us coughing and heaving, the squad stared in stunned silence. Not one of them moved to help. Ramirez finally crouched, pulling me to my feet with a rare nod. No words, just respect. Kendall, dripping and pale, pushed away from me like he couldn't accept the reality that I'd saved him. His glare said it all. He hated owing me his life. We regrouped, soaked and shaken, but the mission wasn't over. As we climbed the slope toward the objective, blanks cracked from the tree line. "Contact front," the squad leader shouted. Everyone hit the dirt. The simulation had turned into chaos fast. Smoke grenades hissed, filling the air with a bitter cloud. Orders flew left and right, but in the confusion, our radio operator took a hit. Simulated, but he was down. The squad leader screamed for a replacement, but no one moved. Kendall barked, "Cole can't do it. He'll screw it up." His voice carried sharp, panicked. My heart pounded. The radio lay in the mud, the lifeline to our artillery support. And in that split second, I remembered nights alone in the barracks, flipping through Dad's old field manuals, studying diagrams and codes no one thought I cared about. My hand moved before my mind caught up. I grabbed the handset. "This is Delta Squad. Grid 1489, fire mission, fire for effect." The words came out. Steady, my voice clear. Silence followed. Then seconds later, the hills lit up with simulated artillery blasts right on target. The opposing force scattered, their ambush broken. The squad's disbelief was almost louder than the blanks. I had done it, and they knew it. But the moment wasn't over. Sergeant Miller stormed onto the hilltop, face twisted with fury. He had watched everything. I braced myself for the usual. Another insult, another public tearing down. Instead, he froze. His eyes narrowed, scanning me, the squad, the smoldering smoke drifting through the trees. "Who called that fire mission?" he barked. Kendall opened his mouth, ready to claim it. Ramirez cut in first, pointing straight at me. "Cole did, Sergeant." Miller's head snapped toward me. For a long, terrible second, I thought he'd chew me out for overstepping, but instead his face shifted. The fury drained. What replaced it was something I had never seen in his eyes before. Respect. "You?" he muttered almost to himself. "Damn." He stepped closer, his voice rising for the whole squad to hear. "Cole just saved your sorry asses. Without him, this mission would have been a wash." The squad went dead silent. Kendall's face turned ashen, his pride gutted. That was the climax, the moment everything flipped. The humiliation, the laughter, the long nights alone on the obstacle course. It all came to this. The farm boy, the outcast, the one they thought was dead weight, had just outperformed them when it mattered most. My heart hammered in my chest as the weight of it sank in. I hadn't just survived. I'd turned the tide, and they couldn't take it away from me. We finished the mission in silence. No jokes, no insults. Just the crunch of boots on wet leaves and the occasional cough. Back at the assembly area, Miller dismissed us with a rare nod instead of his usual bark. "Get some rest. You earned it." His eyes lingered on me for a second longer before he turned away. That small gesture meant more than any medal could have. It was recognition, grudging but real. In the barracks later, the mood was strange. No one dared mock me. Some avoided my eyes altogether, as if ashamed. Kendall sat on his bunk, staring at the floor, his jaw tight. He didn't speak. For once, he had no words. Ramirez caught my eye from across the room. He didn't smile, didn't clap me on the back, just gave the smallest nod, the kind soldiers give when words aren't enough. And I understood. That nod meant I wasn't invisible anymore. I was one of them. Lying in my bunk, exhaustion pulling me under, I thought of my father, of the journal under my pillow, of the promise I'd made. For the first time since I stepped into boot camp, I felt like I wasn't carrying his name in vain. I had stumbled, fallen, been broken down to nothing. But tonight, when the test came, I had stood up, not for glory, not for pride, but because soldiers don't leave their own behind. Because resilience isn't loud, it's quiet, patient, and when the moment comes, it roars louder than all the insults in the world. That night, the barracks was silent. No laughter, no mocking. Just the sound of men who had seen something shift, even if they didn't want to admit it. And as I drifted to sleep, soaked, sore, and bruised, I knew one thing for certain. The storm I had weathered was just the beginning. Something bigger was coming, and this time, I wouldn't face it as the outcast. I'd face it as a soldier. The barracks were never truly quiet, not even at night. Someone always coughed, someone always shifted in their bunk, boots clattering faintly against the floor. But after that field exercise, the silence was different. It wasn't the ordinary lull of exhaustion. It was heavy, like the air itself had changed. I walked in, dripping mud, my pack still damp from the river. For the first time since I'd arrived, nobody said a word to me. No snickers, no insults, no farm boy jokes tossed over the racks. Just silence. I thought maybe that was respect, or maybe it was shame. Either way, I sat on my bunk, pulled off my boots, and waited for someone to say it out loud. It came from Kendall, of course. He sat across the aisle, his arms crossed, eyes locked on me like a sniper. "Don't let it go to your head, Cole," he muttered, voice sharp. "You got lucky, that's all. Luck runs out." His buddies nodded weakly, but even they didn't sound convinced. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The river had said enough. The fire mission had said enough. The quiet stares around us told me the platoon already knew the truth, even if Kendall refused to. The next day at Chow, the shift became clearer. Normally I'd sit alone, corner table, head down. This time as I carried my tray, a space opened up across from Ramirez. He didn't wave me over, didn't even look up from his plate. But when I sat down, he didn't move away either. That alone said everything. Some of the others kept glancing at me, their whispers different, now not mocking, curious. "That was him, right? He called the strike?" "Yeah, dead on. Saved Kendall, too." My fork shook in my hand. Not from nerves, from something else I hadn't felt in weeks. Validation. It was small, but it was real. Still, Miller hadn't said a word since the exercise. That was unusual. He always had something to say, and usually it was brutal. I figured he was waiting, saving it up for the right moment. It came sooner than I expected. That afternoon, he called formation outside the barracks. The sun baked down, sweat dripping off our faces as we stood at attention. Miller paced slowly in front of us, arms folded behind his back. Then he stopped. "Cole, front and center." My heart thudded as I marched out, boots striking the pavement. This was it. The humiliation, the tearing down in front of everyone. I braced myself, jaw tight, eyes locked straight ahead. Miller circled me once, twice, his silence worse than his shouting. Finally he spoke. "You know what I saw the other night? I saw a platoon full of men about to fail, and I saw one soldier, one, step up when it mattered." His voice rose, cutting sharp through the air. Cole didn't freeze. Cole didn't quit. Cole didn't whine. He acted, and because of him, this squad finished the mission. The silence behind me was deafening. I could feel the stares, the shock rippling through the ranks. Miller's voice hardened. "You think nobility is shiny boots and clean uniforms? You think it's loud mouths and bragging rights? Wrong. Nobility is grit. Nobility is action. And this man, this so-called farm boy, showed me more soldiering in one night than some of you have in this whole cycle." Then it happened. Something none of us expected. Miller snapped a crisp salute. To me. Gasps broke through the formation. My chest tightened, throat burning. For a second, I couldn't move. Then instinct took over. I returned the salute, hand trembling slightly, eyes locked on his. It wasn't long, just a moment, but it hit like an explosion. A reversal so sharp it silenced every doubt, every insult. Miller lowered his hand, turning back to the platoon. "Take a hard look, gentlemen. Learn what it means to earn respect." The squad broke formation after, murmurs buzzing. Some of the guys clapped me on the shoulder as they passed. Not all, but enough. Ramirez walked by last. He paused, gave me that same small nod, and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. "Told you, tougher than you look." It wasn't praise, it wasn't a speech, but from Ramirez, it was everything. Kendall didn't say a word. He stood off to the side, his face pale, jaw tight. He had nothing left to throw at me. The man who mocked me every chance he got, who strutted around like the platoon's crown jewel, had been dragged under by a river and saved by the one he hated most. And now the sergeant himself had put him in the shadows. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. That night, back in the barracks, the atmosphere was different again. The jokes and banter returned, but this time I wasn't the target. I wasn't invisible either. I was part of it, even if just at the edges. And as I sat on my bunk, journal open under the dim light, I wrote the words I never thought I'd get to write. I'm no longer the weak one. Not tonight. Tonight I was a soldier. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Respect in the military is fragile. One slip, and it's gone. The road ahead would be harder, not easier. Still, for the first time, I had proof. Proof that I could rise. Proof that my father's words weren't wasted. And as the lights went out and the barracks settled into uneasy sleep, I held on to that moment like a weapon. Because tomorrow would bring new battles. And this time, I'd be ready. The final week came faster than I expected. Graduation was around the corner. And for the first time since stepping into boot camp, I felt like I had a place. The days blurred into a mix of drills, inspections, and long nights cleaning gear. But something in the air was different. The guys who once mocked me now treated me like part of the squad. It wasn't loud, it wasn't warm, just a space saved in the chow hall, a nod during formation, a shove on the shoulder after PT. Small things, but in this world they mattered. Still, Kendall couldn't let it go. He kept his distance, but every so often I caught him glaring, that same fire in his eyes. He wanted me to slip, to fail just once, so he could reclaim what he lost. And part of me feared he'd get his chance. Respect here was fragile, earned one day and lost the next. The night before graduation, we gathered at the flag for evening retreat. The sky glowed orange as the sun dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows across the parade ground. The bugle sounded, sharp and haunting, and the flag lowered slow, every eye on it. I stood there, boots planted firm, the weight of the journey pressing heavy on my chest. From being called worthless in front of the whole platoon, to clawing up obstacle walls alone at midnight, to pulling Kendall out of that river when no one else moved. Every moment crashed into me at once. I clenched my fists, swallowing hard. After retreat, the platoon broke into small groups, quiet conversations echoing across the yard. Ramirez walked by, boots clicking steady. He paused near me, his face unreadable. Then he said just 6 words, calm and low. You carried the platoon that night. No praise, no exaggeration, just the truth. And it hit me harder than any award could. Later, back in the barracks, Kendall finally snapped. He stood in front of me, voice sharp but shaking. You think you're one of us now? You're not. You're nothing but a lucky farm kid. The room froze. The others looked away, waiting to see what I'd do. For weeks I had taken it, swallowed the insults, stayed silent. But not now. Not after everything. I stood, slow and steady, eyes locked on his. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the tension like a blade. Luck didn't drag you out of that river, Kendall. Luck didn't call fire on target. That was me, and you know it. The silence that followed was suffocating. Kendall's face went red, his fist clenched, but he didn't move. He couldn't, because deep down, he knew I was right, and for the first time, he had no weapon left. He just turned, shoved past the racks, and left the barracks in silence. The squad exhaled, the tension breaking. Someone muttered, "About damn time." That was the moment I knew it had come full circle. The humiliation, the laughter, the nights I thought I wouldn't make it, all of it led here. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was standing my ground. Graduation morning was clear, the air sharp with pride. Rows of us stood in crisp uniforms, boots shining like mirrors, rifles gleaming. Families filled the stands, waving flags, snapping pictures. When my name was called, I marched forward, chest high, the weight of my father's words carried in every step. Miller handed me the certificate, his eyes meeting mine. For once, his voice softened. You proved them wrong, Cole. Don't forget what that took. As I turned back toward the formation, I saw Ramirez in the line, his chin raised. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. His nod said it all. And in that instant, I realized something. Nobility isn't medals or applause. It's standing tall when the world pushes you down. It's refusing to quit, even when nobody believes in you. It's carrying the weight, not for glory, but because it's what's right. That night, back in the barracks for the last time, I opened my journal one final time. I wrote, Dad, I thought I was small, but I carried your name forward. I didn't quit, and that was enough. I closed the book, placed it under my pillow, and stood to salute the folded flag on my desk. The journey had broken me, rebuilt me, and left me stronger. And as the lights dimmed, I knew this wasn't just the end of boot camp. It was the beginning of everything that came after. The wind rippled across the parade ground as the flag climbed the pole, snapping sharp against the morning sky. The platoon stood in silence, shoulders squared, eyes forward. And then it happened. Miller, the same man who once tore me apart in front of everyone, turned his head ever so slightly and gave me a single quiet nod. No words, no ceremony, just that one gesture. In the military, that meant more than a speech. It was respect earned, not given. I'll never forget the weight of that moment, standing beneath the flag, boots planted firm, knowing I had crossed a line no one could push me back from. That's what this story's about. The farm kid no one believed in, the recruit mocked, humiliated, written off before he even had a chance. He stayed silent when the world spat in his face. He endured. And when the moment came, he rose. Not by shouting, not by proving others wrong with words, but by letting his actions speak. In the end, the loudest insult was silence, and the strongest weapon was resilience. The lesson is simple but eternal. You don't measure a soldier by how shiny his boots are or how smooth his words sound. You measure him by what he does when the weight of the world is crushing his back. As the old saying goes, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And in the military, there's no truer truth than this. Actions speak louder than words. If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experiences in the comments below. Hit the like button if you believe in the power of resilience, and subscribe so you won't miss the next story of courage, honor, and brotherhood. Until then, stay strong, stay proud, and remember, you're never alone in this fight.